In this uncertain world of why nots, we've already said, why not Doug Gottlieb? Why not Corey Williams? The biggest one, why not bring the legendary Huggy Bear home to the house that Henry Iba built?
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, y'all, and hello, all. Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily stop for all things Cowboy and Cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. I want to thank you kindly for stopping by to make this your first listen. We're available on all of your podcasting platforms, visually as well on YouTube. Find me personally on X at AllDayOState. Today, we get to dive in directly to the continuation of the coaching search. Now, yesterday, we were able to cover some of the potential guys that everybody in the country is going to be going after. This time around, I wanted to kind of narrow in on the path. And yes, the conversations about Bob Huggins, a.k.a. Huggy Bear, they are legitimate, right? But we've been in on the Steve Lutz train for a very long time, like at least a couple months, style long time. His matchup coming up could expedite some things, obviously. But, you've got Steve Alford cruising at Nevada after having a successful stop already at UCLA. The conversations, again, with Bob Huggins are legitimate. Huggy Bear is a Big 12 guy with stops at West Virginia, Ohio State, UCF, Cincinnati, and then West Virginia again. He supports a 935 414 record. He's won 13 conference titles. He's taking 2 different teams to the Final Four. He's played in 9 Sweet 16s, several Elite Eights. He was Coach of the Decade in 2005. He's made 23 NCAA tournaments in his 26 years of coaching. He was only the second player in history of basketball to reach 300 wins at 2 different schools. Who was the first coach to do that? Little trivia. You've probably already guessed it. If you guessed Eddie Sutton, you would be right. Our own, the legend with his signature on the court, Eddie Sutton was the first, who also had some problems, who also irritated his former university and the NCAA in being Kentucky, who also had to complete rehab and AA and do all the meetings and all that fun jazz to get to a positive level. Bob Huggins has had to do all of these things. And I'm not promoting drinking like a fish by any stretch of the imagination. But, okay, if Eddie Sutton can drink a fifth of whiskey before winning us a Big 12 title, then maybe so can Huggy Bear. If Eddie can take a shot and then throw the basketball team in helmets and shoulder pads, so can Bob Huggins. Now, of course, I think this would be a good get. I think it would be great for Oklahoma State. I think it would be great for the roster and the development of the roster. But I feel like if it was going to be Bob Huggins, because there is no buyout, right? That's massively beneficial. Contractually speaking, he's made a significant amount of money. So I'm sure he's probably not going to be looking to rake in the coals over this next move here. So financially, it makes sense. The big name makes sense. But the longer it goes, the less likely I would imagine that Bob Huggins is going to be the guy in Stillwater, Oklahoma. Because again, he doesn't have a buyout. There's no competing clauses anywhere. He doesn't have a team preparing for the NCAA tournament. So we're waiting on something, right? There's a lot of people who would love Bob Huggins' services. I think Oklahoma State would be one of them. We would be wise to. But then we got to jump to somebody that we've been in contact for a long time. We just mentioned him a little bit. We've talked about him, a month or so ago. And that was Steve Lutz. Steve Lutz is at Western Kentucky. And he might be the best fit of the entire bunch. Like, even if you go over, Danny Sprinkle or Josh Schertz or Will Wade, none of those guys are as good as a fit at Oklahoma State as Steve Lutz. Now, after, this tournament run. We'll kind of see what shakes out. But the beginning of this season was not the way they wanted it to go. It wasn't what they wanted nor expected. But nonetheless, they found a way to weather the storm and then ended the season winning the Conference USA tournament title. He entered this season with almost a 70% winning ratio. He was 70-34 overall with previous stops at Stephen F. Austin, SMU, Creighton, Purdue, and Texas A&M Corpus Christi before taking the Western Kentucky job. They drew number 2 Marquette, right? So that's not an easy test. Again, we're going to see some of these names naturally matriculate after a loss, just like we could see some of these names naturally tick up the board financially with multiple wins. So that's a catch-22. But he's been to the tournament before. He's won in the NCAA tournament before. So the moment won't be too big for him. The matchup with Marquette is not going to be crazy in his eyes. I like this hire because he's a Texas boy with Texas ties. I like this hire because he's an old school Southern dude. He chose Western Kentucky over a multitude of other places that wanted him because of the Bowling Green, Kentucky community. Now, he said in an interview that he loves salt of the earth, small, intimate, blue-collar style towns. He wants to coach somewhere that has a rich tradition and history of winning, which Western Kentucky, it does, with really good fan support and an athletic department that is dedicated to the game of basketball. Now, the fan support, you could say, is 50-50 at times. But I also feel like the fan base is yearning to be more supportive. They just haven't had a lot to be supportive of. So maybe the attendance in Gallagher-Iba will, level out whenever we have a coach and a product that everybody's super excited about. And the winning tradition, yes, we have that. The blue-collar, small town, yes, we have that. So basically, everything that he's looking for, we have in Stillwater. The rich tradition and history is definitely achievable in Stillwater. We already have it. And him learning at Creighton and Purdue really set him up to take advantage of it immediately. Again, this season, they went through some rough patches, but they also went 12-2 at home. His buyout is very manageable. It's not listed like some of the other coaches, but what I did find is it's $650,000 over 4 years. Most contracts go down to 75% after the first year, which would mean over his 4 years, that's $2.6 million. 75% of that would be $1.95 million. He does have bonuses and reaching the tournament, winning conference titles, all that fun jazz. They also had to find cutesy ways to hook him up with a free car as part of his contract. You don't have to do that at Western or Oklahoma State because you had to do it at Western Kentucky. But if there's a way to classify the additional stuff like the cars and all that, okay, it's only going to be an extra few $100K. So his buyout at worst case scenario would be like 2.3 mil. I know that he's been a guy that we've been in on the longest. That doesn't mean he's 100% the guy or the number one guy, but obviously if we swing and miss somewhere along the way, like possibly a Danny Sprinkle situation, if Danny Sprinkle is in fact headed up to Washington, then clearly Steve Lutz is a very serious threat to take the job, or we wouldn't still be communicating with him. All right. The biggest, the best. Actually, you know what? We're gonna save that real quick. I do have to jump in here, ladies and gentlemen. We got to talk about a new way for you to capitalize on your money, and that's with Better Together. Better Together, it's spelled just like that, is a super unique way for you to get in on the daily fantasy sports action with a buddy. Right? You can download it from an app store and get hooked up. It's a familiar experience with your traditional daily sports fantasies, but with a social twist. You can now play with friends, teammates, buddies, all that fun jazz. It kind of makes you realize that daily fantasy sports is fun alone, of course, but like a lot of other things, it's much better when you get to do it together with friends, right? It has the synergy from working together that gives you better chances of winning. So you can hook up with a buddy, and instead of competing against him, which is also awesome, with this bet or together, you can bet with him. You can strategize. You can find different ways and different defenses and different coverages that you think that X, Y, and Z guy or team can exploit. And then you sit down together and you come up with a plan for betting. It doesn't matter if your bracket's already been busted with one of the first 4 in or out. It doesn't matter if you're tired of the old daily fantasy grind, because it does get slightly monotonous where, you get all crossed up and it makes it not as fun. Maybe you lost the last leg of a pick'em, and we all know when you add things to a parlay and then you lose the very last one, it hurts your heart a little bit. So get in on this. It's the first cooperative daily fantasy platform where teamwork can trap talent with your friends' help. You bet with them, not against them. Pick more or less on real-time player stats. You can then strategize with your buddy to boost your odds. Climb the leaderboards together, and if you do a good job, you can absolutely fill your coffers or your piggy banks, whatever you want to call it. I know my buddy Trent, all right? Trent Snitz, we got to get him back on the show, but we also got to talk about the fact that he might be the guy that I go back and forth with to team up at Better Together to make some money. Download Better Together today from your app store and sign up using the promo code Locked On for a chance to win your share of over $1,000 in cash prizes. Remember that code, Locked On, all one word. Winning is fun, but it's actually a lot more fun when you do it together. So go check out Better Together today. And the famous words of Lee Corso, not so fast, my friends. Because on top of that, we also got to talk about the best way for you to have the MVP. And the MVP should be your vehicle. With Nissan, the right passion, drive, and patience are what it takes to bring home the W. eBay Motors has everything you're going to need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Whether it's superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED lighting kits, whatever speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered with over 122 million parts to choose from. Keep your number one ride or die rig alive. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, it means your part is guaranteed to fit your rig every time or your money back. With eBay Motors, we want you burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need, all the prices you want, it's super easy to turn your car into the MVP today. Keep your ride or die rig alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available for U.S. customers because you are special. Speaking of being special, the next guy we're going to talk about might be the most special of the bunch. Again, I think Bob Huggins is a no-brainer, right? It makes way too much sense. But I also think Steve Lutz is a phenomenal fit for Stillwater, Oklahoma. And that's important, right? Because if you get some people that don't love the small town, intimate feel of Stillwater, that means they're probably leaving as soon as they get a USC or Ohio State style of job. Steve Lutz might not be that guy simply because of the comfort factor that he already has. But, all right, if I was a betting man, and I like to be, all right, I would bet some money here on Darian DeVries. We talked about the Cinderella story that's just waiting to burst, and that's Drake. Drake is picked to beat Washington State. Yes, they're the lower seed, but I think nationally people realize how talented Drake is. So a 10 seed is projected to beat a 7 seed right here, right now. We might still be in on the Danny Sprinkle thing. It doesn't appear as though that's the case, but we might not be ready to hire Doug, or we might not be able to get Danny. So this is flawless. And you guys know, I was very upset at the idea of potentially losing out on Jalen Montanati. Well, that cushion could get better with Tucker DeVries. Guys, Darian DeVries is a super hot name right now. And while they're in the midst of almost a 30-win season, they recently beat Indiana State, right? Josh Hurts is another big-time guy that is circulating all over the country. But Indiana State should have made the NCAA tournament. It's all right. We're going to now have the opportunity to watch Darian DeVries in the tournament. And again, they should win. They are better than Washington State. The coaching philosophy is better, right? He's an Iowa dude, played for Northern Iowa, coached at Creighton with and through the Dana Altman staff, rolled right into the Greg McDermott staff. So talk about learning. There's not very many dudes out as much as those two dudes. And yes, Altman is killing it. Nevada's, a very hot team right now that should be able to make a run. So Dana Altman is going to be a hot name as well that I'm sure we're reaching out to. But Darian DeVries fits what we're looking for. Darian DeVries took over at Drake in 2018. He did sign a new contract through 2029. But again, it's manageable, right? Missouri Valley Coach of the Year 2 times. Conference champion 2 times, has an overall record of 150 and 54. That is over 73% win percentage as a college coach. Back-to-back conference player of the year recipient and conference tournament MVP. He hasn't declared for the draft yet, and some expect him to because he's projected as an early first rounder or late first rounder, early second rounder. Some people have him as the sleeper first round guy. He has a phenomenal shot. This is Tucker. So if we can't get Jalen Montanati, all right, if we can get Darian DeVries, he brings his son, Tucker DeVries, who has very impressive range. He is A++ from beyond the arc. He's another kid that can absolutely stroke it. Guys, if he were to come to Oklahoma State, he would likely be the best player immediately. That is if we kept Brandon Garrison, Eric Daly Jr., Jamiron Keller, Bryce Thompson, all of them. Tucker DeVries would likely come in and instantaneously be the best player on the floor. And he's 6'7", 210 pounds. So who out there carries the level of respect that also is going to help with roster retention, that also is going to bring somebody in that can instantaneously help the roster? That is Darian DeVries. So if I were, to bet, I would bet a lot of money on Darian DeVries. I would secondarily put some money on Steve Lutz. I don't think I'll put money on Huggy Bear. I'd love to, but it's not very likely. Just like Doug Gottlieb's not very likely. Corey Williams, not likely. I really, really hate the fact that Washington might get a steal of a deal in Danny Sprinkle, although he does have an almost $3 million buyout. That's fine. If we end up with Steve Lutz or Darian DeVries, we're in really, really, really good shape moving forward. Unlike OU basketball. Oh, my Atlanta. Yeah. OU goes super soft by declining to participate in the NIT tournament. Because what? OU basketball is all of a sudden the Bama of football? OU basketball that plays in a junior high school arena that's worse and smaller than the local high school down the road is too good for the NIT? Oh, this is great. The basketball powerhouse of OU is too good for the NIT. Then you saw Tom Crean, former Indiana coach, lose his ever-loving mind on Indiana for them doing the same thing. And I agree with him. It is weak. It is soft. It should have a negative effect when it comes to recruiting because I don't want my kid going somewhere that is willing to quit. There's not much better in your life that will ever compare to playing college ball with your college ball buddies. So one more game, one more tournament, one more event, one more whatever. It should matter. It should mean something. But is this a big surprise? From OU, no. From Porter Moser, maybe, right? I had a lot of respect for Porter Moser. Matter of fact, last season, I thought OU fans, were very disrespectful to him and talking about, him being gone, this and that and the other. But for us in Oklahoma State country, is the NIT slightly bothersome for everybody? Yes. I mean, that means you didn't get a date to the dance. So now you're going to go dance out in the parking lot. I get it. But again, that's more games. It's more basketball. It's more opportunities in recruiting, right? Every single away team that you play, it's like an interview for a potential job later on. I don't know anybody, nor would I like to know anybody that would want to go play for a coach and an organization that is willing to give up because they're not happy. Get out of here. I mean, St. John's too. Like, what are you doing, Patino? You're not a Louisville. You're not winning national titles. You are just so cool, and you're too good for the NIT at St. John's. Get that out of here, too. The teams that decline to play simply because they are butthurt is bullcrap. And again, I think it should have a negative reflection on them and the recruiting and transfer era. I'm not everybody, right? But you tell me down in the comment section, as a parent, would that be a glowing endorsement of where you should send your son to go play? I don't know. I wouldn't do it. I mean, I wouldn't send anybody to OU, but I dang sure wouldn't send them to play for a coach and a university that has a history of being nothing but lying, conniving, stealing, cheating buffoons. That's what you get in OU. So this makes a lot of sense. Actually, it's not right? It's not fair to the players. It's not fair to the walk-ons. It's not fair to the scholarship guys. It's not fair to the incoming recruiting class. You look Starman soft. Embrace it, OU. That's what you do. I mean, look, you took off like a thief in the night for the SEC. For what? For money? Cool. You couldn't cut it in the last couple of years of the Big 12, but you're going to instantaneously compete for the SEC. No, you're not, because the weakness that runs around campus is infectious. And you are an infection. That campus, that university, you're an infection to the country. It's gross that we have to watch you and pay attention to you. And now it's gross that we have to hear about this crap fest. But, again, what do you expect down the road in old stinking Stormin' Norman? Tis what it is. And we got to cover the Big 12 running backs run the country, not just the conference, the entire country. But before we do that, let's talk about Nissan. Guys, you already know, okay? You got to get hooked up. This new line of 2024 SUVs is amazing. And March Madness bracket is designed to highlight, all right, some up-and-coming teams that are like the up-and-coming Nissans. The Auburn Tigers are that Nissan Pathfinder for me. Just like the Houston Cougars, right, are the Nissan Armada. Just like Iowa State could be the Nissan Rogue of the bunch. The Auburn Tigers, they're for real. Bruce Pearl's for real. Corey Williams is an amazing assistant coach. And they're going to give everybody a hard time in this tournament. They're not an easy out. Just like it's not easy to choose between the Nissan Rogue, the Nissan Pathfinder, or the big body beast of an Armada. Go check them out today to find out where you're going to begin your next big adventure. Shop Nissan at USA.com. Again, that is Nissan at USA.com. Shop there now to begin your next big adventure. Meanwhile, we roll into the conversation of Ollie Gordon, of course, is the best running back in America, let alone the Big 12. But it's funny when people try to talk down to the Big 12. It's funny when people nationally still try to say the Big 12's that conference that has crazy offenses, throws the ball a ton, but never has any defense. We have turned into a smash mouth, old school conference, right? So as the SEC was making fun of the Big 12 for being so offensive oriented, they've switched, right? Now you're seeing SEC schools launch it up 70 times a game. Meanwhile, the Big 12 reverted back to some of the old school stuff, which is why Over 50% of the top 10 returning running backs in the United States are from the Big 12. Obviously, you got Ollie Gordon, 6'1", 215 pounds, rushed for 1,732 yards last year, 6.1 per clip, and 21 touchdowns. Number 2 returning running back in America is Taj Brooks from Texas Tech. Coming in at 5'10", 230 pounds, he put up a healthy 1,541 yards at 5.3 per clip and 10 tutties. Number 3, a different conference, the ACC, in Marion Hampton. Marion Hampton had 253 carries at 6 foot, 220 pounds. He was able to rush for 1,504 yards at 5.9 per clip and 15 tutties. Number 4 returning running back in America, back in the Big 12, R.J. Harvey. This 5'9", 200-pound running back rushed for 1,416 yards at 6.3 yards per clip and 16 touchdowns. Number 5, the American Athletic Conference, Maki Hughes from Tulane. He had 253 carries last year, coming in at 5'11", 205 pounds, 1,378 yards rushing, 5.3 yards per clip, and 7 tutties. Number 6, Mountain West, Ashton Genty from Boise State. This guy is really good, all right? 5'9", 210 pounds, 1,347 yards at 6.1 yards per clip, and 14 touchdowns. Number 7, from the homeless conference, the Pac-2, 7.5, 12, whatever they are, Jaden Ott from Cal. He had 245 carries last year. The 6 foot, 200-pound beast rushed for 1,305 yards at 5.3 a clip and 12 tutties. Number 8, back in the Big 12, KU's Devin Neal. He had 203 carries last year. The 5'11", 210-pound back was able to put up 1,280 yards, 6.3 yards per clip, and 16 touchdowns. And we all know he missed a few games as well. So him numerically could shoot up a lot this season. Right next to him, number 9 in the country returning is back in the Big 12, K-State's DJ Giddens. He had 223 carries. This 6'1", 212-pound monster had 1,226 yards at 5.5 per clip and 10 touchdowns. Rounding out the top 10 returning running backs, the other homeless Pac-2, 7'5", 12 guy, Damian Martinez from Oregon State. This 6 foot, 232-pound back had 194 carries that amounted to 1,185 yards, 6.1 yards per clip, and 9 touchdowns. And then there's some like honorable mentions, right? Corey Kiner, another Big 12 running back out of Cincinnati, 5'10", 215 pounds. He had 1,047 yards at over 5.5 per clip, right? So he's just next there on the list. There's some other guys you got to mention. I know people are surprised Quinshon Judkins was not on that list. Neither is Henderson, both now being at Ohio State. Kind of surprised that Judkins left Ole Miss, but it is what it is. Penny Boone left to Toledo for Louisville. He'll be an interesting guy to watch after putting up 1,400 yards and 15 touchdowns last season. Marcus Carroll left Georgia State to replace Cody Schrader at Mizzou after putting up almost 1,300 yards and 13 touchdowns. He could be a fun one to watch as well. Ismail Mahdi staying put at Texas State is kind of a crime, but that's also the power of G.J. Kinney and the Texas State Bobcats. So when you look at running backs, you just look at the Big 12. Everything else is somewhat insignificant. Tis what it is. I said what I said, and I stand by it. The Big 12 is the bee's knees if you're going to play running back. It's not the SEC anymore. It's not the Big 10, which is known as the conference that hands the ball off all the time. The Big 12 runs the country, period. That's that. And that's also all we're going to have for this one right here. Alrighty, y'all. Stay tuned for some of the next guests coming up. You know I love you. As always, God bless. Go Pokes. Thank you for tuning in to make this your first listen here in Locked On Oklahoma State. You could be anywhere. So happy you choose to be here. Like it if you like the daggone thing. Dislike it if you don't. That's cool too. Most importantly, share, comment, subscribe. And my podcasting people out there, the bricks, the butter, the foundation. Hit the stars. Leave a review. Do what you do. All righty, y'all. Later, taters.